You weren't supposed to be back until Friday, my brother said, standing in the doorway of my own condo like he owned it. He did not move. He did not apologize. He just held the door at a 6-inch crack, his shoulder pressed against the frame, blocking my view of my own living room. Behind him, I could hear the television. My television, playing something loud and cartoonish at full volume. Daniel. My voice was flat, controlled, the same voice I use when a supplier tries to overcharge me, and I need them to understand I already know. Open the door. He shifted his weight. Still didn't move. Mom's inside, he said, like that was an explanation. She's just getting them settled. It's only temporary. Getting who settled? He finally opened the door. My condo looked like a storage unit had detonated inside it. There were duffel bags stacked against my entryway console, the one I'd driven 2 hours to find at an antique market in Stratford. A car seat was wedged between my couch and the coffee table. My dining chairs had been pushed against the wall to make room for an inflatable mattress that had not yet been fully deflated. My mother was in my kitchen, opening and closing my cabinets with the focused energy of someone taking inventory. Oh, sweetheart. She turned when she heard the door and smiled like I had arrived at a dinner party she'd thrown in my honor. You look exhausted. Come in, come in. I was just figuring out the storage situation. The storage situation, I repeated. For Melissa and the kids. Daniel's place is too small, you know that, and your father and I only have the one spare room. And with my knee the way it is, the kids on the pullout would be— Mom. I set my suitcase down by the door. Very deliberately. Who said Melissa and the kids could stay here? The smile stayed, but something behind her eyes recalibrated. We didn't think you'd mind, she said. It's only for a little while. Derek walked out last Thursday. Just packed a bag and left. She has nowhere to go, Claire. She has 2 children. What were we supposed to do? Let her figure it out on her own. I looked past my mother to my kitchen island, which was now covered in a plastic tub of kids' cutlery, a half-eaten box of goldfish crackers, and someone's jacket draped over my bar stool. My bar stool that I had specifically bought because the back was the exact right height for how I like to sit when I'm working at the counter. Where is Melissa right now? I said. She took the kids to the park. She wanted to give you space when you arrived. She felt terrible about the whole thing. Honestly, How did you get in? A pause. You gave us the fob, Daniel said from behind me. He'd come in and was now leaning against the wall like he lived there. For emergencies. This isn't an emergency that involves you being inside my home when I'm not here. Claire. My mother's voice dropped into its particular register, the one she used when she wanted me to understand that I was being unreasonable without actually saying so. Your sister-in-law has 2 little girls. Hazel is 4. Ruby is 18 months. Derek hasn't given her a single dollar since he left, and she doesn't know if he's coming back. You have a 2-bedroom condo, and it's just you. She gestured around like the space itself was evidence of my excess. Look at this place. You have a guest room that hasn't been slept in 6 months. That's not the point. Then what is the point, sweetheart? What is the point of having family if we can't count on each other? I knew what she was doing. My mother is a gifted reframer. She had spent my entire life making generosity feel like the minimum and boundaries feel like cruelty. She wasn't asking me to help Melissa. She was informing me that refusing would make me the villain, and she had already decided which role she was playing in this story. I need to think, I said. Of course, she nodded warmly. Melissa will be back around 5. We can all have dinner together. I picked up groceries. She opened the fridge to show me. She had rearranged everything. My groceries were pushed to the back and the entire top shelf had been reorganized around Daniel's 6-pack of Coors Light. I picked up my suitcase. I told them I was going to change. I walked into my bedroom and sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the wall for approximately 90 seconds. Then I opened my laptop. I was not going to cry about this. I was not going to yell about it either. I had spent my career in supply chain logistics, which means I spend my days solving problems created by other people's poor planning. I am not emotional about inefficiency. I map it. I find the leverage point. I fix it. The leverage point here was real estate law. I pulled up the Residential Tenancies Act for Ontario. I read it carefully, the way I read contracts, looking for the thing that most people miss. And there it was, clear as anything. If someone occupies your property and you accept rent from them, even informally, they become a tenant. And a tenant has rights, significant rights. Rights that can take 4 to 6 months and an LTB hearing to undo. I was not going to let Melissa become a tenant, but I also couldn't throw a woman with 2 toddlers out on the street without my entire family deciding I was a sociopath. That was the trap. They had set it so neatly, moved in the furniture of guilt before I'd even arrived home, making me the obstacle, making removal feel like cruelty. I needed them to leave voluntarily. I needed to make it so that staying became more complicated than going. I thought about my brother, about the way he'd been standing in my doorway, About the fact that he had taken 2 days off work this week. He mentioned it at Christmas because he was renovating his rec room. His 3-bedroom house in Barrie, with a finished basement and a garage that he uses for nothing except his hockey gear. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, I just want to say I think it's really good you're on board with this," I said. I kept my voice warm, slightly tired, like I'd made peace with something. "Mom's right. Family has to show up for each other. I'm going to make it work on my end. But I was thinking while we figure out the long-term plan, you should take Melissa's name off the emergency contact at the girls' daycare and put yours on. Since you're her brother-in-law, you're the closest male adult in their lives right now. The daycare is going to want an updated form anyway." Silence. "I mean, I can do that if you think it's best," I continued. "But I figured since you're family too, and you have more space for the girls if I need to travel for work, it makes sense to share the responsibility." More silence. "Then, I don't know if I need to be on the form. I just thought you could." "Of course," I said brightly. "Whatever makes sense. Let's talk about it at dinner." I hung up, planted the seed, let it grow. When Melissa came back with Hazel and Ruby at 5:15, I had already made coffee and was sitting calmly at the kitchen island with my laptop open. I had also, quietly, reset my smart home app. New access codes on the door, though I hadn't engaged them yet. I wanted to do this in the right order. Melissa looked terrible, in the way that people look when they've been crying intermittently for a week and are trying very hard to appear functional. I felt genuinely sorry for her. I want to be clear about that. Derek leaving was not her fault, and she didn't deserve it. What she also didn't deserve was to be used as a pawn by my mother and my brother to colonize my home without asking. "Claire, I'm so sorry," she said before she'd even taken off her coat. "This wasn't my idea. I had nowhere to go. And your mom said—" "I know," I said. "Sit down. Do you want coffee?" She sat. I poured. Hazel immediately climbed onto my couch with her boots still on, and I watched a small smear of mud transfer to my cream cushion cover, and I breathed through it. "I want to help," I told Melissa. "I genuinely do. But if you're going to stay here, we need to do it properly. I'm self-employed, I work from home, and I have a mortgage. I can't have the informal situation my mom described. It creates tax issues for me, liability issues, and honestly it puts you in a bad position too. No legal standing, no protections." Melissa wrapped both hands around her mug. "Okay, I have a proposal. I've drafted something called a temporary occupancy license. It's different from a lease." I turned my laptop to face her. "A lease would make you a tenant. A license makes you a licensee. It means you have my permission to be here, but you don't have possession of the property. I can include a termination clause that gives us both an out 14 days notice on either side, so you're not locked in and neither am I." I watched her read. She was a kindergarten teacher. She was careful and thoughtful. She read every line. "There's a section here about a monthly contribution," she said. $600, I said. "I know that's tight right now, but here's why this matters to you. If you pay nothing, you have no legal standing whatsoever. $600 lets me classify this on my taxes and lets you classify it on yours. It also, and this is the part your lawyer would tell you, if you had one, protects you from Derek trying to claim you have no fixed address during any custody dispute." That last part was the greed hook. Not greed for money, greed for security. I had done enough research to know that Derek's departure had probably already triggered Melissa's anxiety about what a custody arrangement might look like. I had just handed her a reason to sign that had nothing to do with me. She picked up the pen. "There's also a clause in here about smoking," she said. "No smoking inside or on the balcony. The building rules, not me." She nodded. She signed. I signed my copy, slid it back across the island, and did not let my expression change. Because what Melissa had just signed was not, in fact, a document that gave her any stability. It was a document that gave me all of it. The 14-day termination clause ran in one direction with effective simplicity. I could end the occupancy license at any time for any reason, with 2 weeks' notice, and she would have no grounds for an LTB hearing because she was not, legally, a tenant. She was a guest with a contract. More importantly, Clause 7. Clause 7 stated that the occupancy license was contingent on the licensee's compliance with all building bylaws, condo corporation rules, and the terms outlined in the host's mortgage agreement. I had called my mortgage broker from my bedroom earlier that afternoon. She confirmed what I already knew. My mortgage terms required that I occupy the property as my principal residence, and that any occupants not listed in the condo corporation's records were technically in breach of building policy. I had given myself a legal exit that had nothing to do with emotion and everything to do with paperwork. My mother was thrilled. She stayed for dinner, pasta she had made from my groceries in my kitchen, and talked about what a good thing this was, and how families were supposed to work like this. And wasn't it so much better when everyone just came together? My brother ate 2 plates and left before the dishes were done. I smiled through all of it. That night, after everyone was asleep, I opened my property management app and reviewed the condo rules. Then I opened the building's resident portal and looked up the occupancy form. Then I called the non-emergency line for the city to ask a clarifying question about short-term occupancy registration. What I found was interesting. Melissa had not listed this address with Service Ontario when she'd updated her information after Derek left. I knew this because my mother had mentioned, at dinner, that Melissa was still receiving mail at the old house and Derek kept throwing it on the porch, which meant Melissa was not officially residing here, which meant she had no registered address, which, in the context of the custody dispute she was quietly dreading, was actually very bad for her. I did not mention this yet. I let the week unfold. By Thursday, the infractions had stacked up like a paper tray in a photocopier. Melissa smoked on the balcony twice. I had the timestamps from the air quality sensor. Hazel had drawn on the inside of the hallway closet door in what I can only describe as passionate crayon work. The building's noise bylaw, 11 p.m. quiet hours, had been breached 4 times when Ruby woke at night, and Melissa's habit of watching videos on her phone at high volume while rocking her back to sleep set off the sound monitor. I documented all of it, not with malice, with methodology. On the 9th day, I got a phone call from my mortgage broker. Not one I had staged, a real one. She had done a routine check and noticed that I had not updated her on the occupancy status of the unit. She was, gently but clearly, flagging that I needed to notify the lender if I had a non-family member occupying the space on a fee basis, or I'd technically be in breach of the residential mortgage terms. I thanked her. I hung up. Then I sat at my desk and thought about what I actually wanted. I wanted my home back. I wanted Melissa to have a real solution, one that was actually hers, not a borrowed one that existed at my convenience. I wanted my mother and my brother to understand that what they had done was not acceptable and would not work on me again. I started making calls. The first call was to a family lawyer I had used when I bought the condo. I asked her about Melissa's actual options, practically speaking. She walked me through the rent geared to income waitlist for Barrie and Innisfil, which Daniel's area fed into the emergency housing supports through the county, and, most importantly, the family law provisions that would require Derek to contribute financially to the children's housing costs while any separation was underway. Melissa had not filed anything yet. She didn't know she could. The second call was to my brother. I've been thinking about the situation, I told him. I've figured something out that I think is actually better for Melissa long term, but I need your help explaining it to her, because she trusts you more than she trusts me right now, and I don't want her to feel like I'm pushing her out. What did you figure out? He said cautiously. She qualifies for emergency family housing support through the county. Real support, not borrowed space. And she needs to file a motion for interim spousal and child support immediately, because every week she waits is a week Derek gets to establish a pattern of paying nothing. A family lawyer can get an emergency order in front of a judge within 10 business days. I paused. I've already called legal aid. She qualifies. There's no cost. Silence on his end. Also, I said, keeping my tone light, I talked to my mortgage lender this week. Turns out having an unregistered occupant on a fee basis is a breach of my mortgage terms. I didn't know that when I signed the license. If the lender flags it before we sort it out, it could affect my renewal rate in the spring. I let that land. I'm not trying to make this about me. I just think Melissa would want to know that her staying here is actually creating a problem for me, that she'd feel terrible about if she found out later. I heard him exhale. I'll talk to her, he said. The third call was to my mother. I didn't tell her anything about the legal strategy. I just told her that I had been thinking about how much pressure Melissa was under, and that I wanted to take her to see a family lawyer this week, as a gift, because no one had sat down with her and actually explained what her rights were, and what Derek was legally obligated to provide. My mother was delighted. She thought it was generous. She told me I had such a good heart, really, underneath everything. I did not correct her framing. 4 days later, I drove Melissa to a legal aid clinic on Dunlop Street. I sat in the waiting room while she went in. An hour and 20 minutes later, she came out looking different. Not happier exactly, but steadier. Like someone who had just been handed a map after being lost. She said I can get an interim order, Melissa told me in the car, for child support and spousal support both. She said judges in this jurisdiction take it seriously when there are 2 kids under 5. She stared out the window. I didn't know he actually had to pay. I thought it was just, like, if he decided to. He has to pay, I said, retroactive to the date of separation. We drove in silence for a minute. I think I should find my own place, she said. Not to me, really. To herself. Working it out. With the support order, I can actually plan. I can see what I can afford. The legal aid lawyer can also connect you with a housing worker, I said. She probably mentioned it. There are programs specifically for single parents with kids under 5, rent subsidies through the province. I had printed out the relevant page from the Ontario Works website, and it was folded in my bag. I handed it to her without ceremony. She took it. She was out of my condo inside of 3 weeks. She found a 2-bedroom unit in a building 5 minutes from her mother's place in Innisfil. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She called me the day she got the interim support order approved, and her voice had the particular quality of someone who had stopped waiting for permission to be okay. My mother came over 2 weeks after Melissa moved out. She brought banana bread, which is what she brings when she wants to be forgiven without acknowledging what she's done. I poured the tea. I cut the bread. I waited. "I just want you to know that I didn't mean for it to cause so much trouble," she said. "We were trying to help." "I know," I said. "And Melissa is in a much better position now. Legal support, her own place, her kids are stable. It worked out." She smiled, relieved, ready to move on. "Mom," I set down my mug. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it properly." I kept my voice even. Not cold, not angry, just clear. The voice I'd worked years to develop for conversations where clarity matters more than comfort. "What you and Daniel did was not helping Melissa. What you did was treat my home like a resource you were entitled to redirect without asking me. You gave away my space, my privacy, and my peace of mind without a single conversation, and you framed my objection as selfishness before I'd said a single word." She started to speak. "I'm not finished," I said, and she stopped. "I understand that you were scared for Melissa and that you love her and the girls. I also love Melissa. I helped her, genuinely, as you saw. But I helped her on my terms, with my consent, and through channels that actually gave her sustainable options. There is a difference between helping someone and using someone else's resources to feel like you helped." My mother looked at the table. "I'm not cutting you off," I told her. "I don't want that. But if you ever use that fob to enter my home when I'm not here again, I will change the building access and you won't have it anymore. And if Daniel is involved in anything similar, the same applies to him, not as punishment, as a boundary. Do you understand the difference?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally, small voice. "I understand." We finished the tea. The banana bread was actually very good. She left at 3 o'clock and hugged me at the door the same way she always does, and I let her. I locked the door behind her, reset the entry code, walked to my living room, which was entirely mine again. No car seat, no inflatable mattress, no crayon on my closet door. My dining chairs were back in their places. My bar stool was at the right height. I sat down. The condo was quiet in the specific way it's quiet when it belongs to you. I had not won by making anyone suffer. I had not performed outrage or threatened or demanded. I had looked at the problem the same way I look at every problem that comes across my desk. Find the leverage point, map the options, remove the emotion, and build the exit that works for everyone who deserves one. My home was not a resource for other people's crises. It was mine, and the most powerful thing I had done was simply refuse to pretend otherwise, quietly, methodically, and completely, until everyone else arrived at the same conclusion.